I'd like to call to order the Municipal Building Authority Board meeting. And Shane, turning it over to you.
Okay. We have the bids in your packet. I hope you've seen those. We were excited about the 8 bidders we had on this project, and the low bid has been vetted out to be the best bid, the lowest applicable bid. It's with Judd, and there's a letter there in your packet from MHTN. They vetted them out as well as their subcontractors, and it's worked out really well, and we're excited to recommend that we go with Judd Construction on the remodel of this building.
Okay. All right. Any questions from board members?
No.
Questions? No questions? No. Okay. I will entertain a motion at this time to accept this bid.
I'll move that we accept the bid as presented from City Manager Shane Scott.
I'll second.
Okay, it's been moved by Board Member DeCare, seconded by Board Member Page. Any comments? Board Member Garden?
Thank you. Yeah, just briefly, it looks like the bids within a range were fairly close to each other, so it's nice to know that the lowest bid was also a very responsive bid, and I feel good about that.
All right. Okay, we'll go to a vote. Board Member Page?
Aye.
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 Okay, motion passes 3-0. I will entertain a motion to adjourn as municipal board.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, thank you.
That's municipal government action.
8 bids, that's good.
And good bids, very good bids.
Yeah. This is for the final discussion. Do you want that now, or then get that Marie? She can.
No, now's good.
Is that just the talk? Those are the talking points?
Yes. This is what Jordan put together. Jordan Stevenson. Hanson.
Thank you.
And maybe one for Michelle. Hope she comes.
Do you want one of your own? Okay.
And I'll just mention again, if you are going to want to speak to any item, you need to sign up on the sign-up sheet out in the foyer.
We're not reconvening until 7, right?
We are not convening until 7. Well, we awarded the bid. You've been busy.
I was stringing. Does that count?
Yes, that totally counts.
You got a quorum.
Yes.
A really great one.
But we did miss you.
What was that? Okay, good.
Yeah.
Looks similar. You feel better over here? I do feel better over here. Yeah? Closer to the bathroom for Old Man River here. Mr. P pees a lot. Mr. pees a lot. How are you? Haven't seen you forever. Yeah. You been doing all right? Are you been keeping yourself busy? Pretty busy. Good. Good. Well, it's good to be anxiously engaged in a good cause.
Okay. All right. All right.
All right. Hey, how you doing? Good. Yeah, it was pretty. Yeah, it was pretty. Stuff. Yeah, we got to figure it out.
Close enough. I'd like to call the July 18th, 2019 City Council meeting to order. We would like to have our opening by Councilmember Jake Gunn.
Our Father in heaven, we bow our heads in humility before thee and ask this day that thou, thy guidance may be with us as we make important decisions for the many good people of Kaysville, that as we have studied the issues, that we might have thy guidance to know what will be the best in the future for all the people of Kaysville. We ask that those who are struggling in the community this day will be comforted and get the help they need from other members of the community. We're grateful for all of the community services that we have, grateful for our first responders and for the lives that they impact for good and the lives that they save. And we're grateful for those who in the middle of the night repair water main leaks and patch the roads, and who are so diligent in keeping our city services acceptable. And we say these things with gratitude in our hearts and minds, and do so in the name of thy Son, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
Join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
Of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. We have a special recognition tonight of members of our community who have served us, and I'd like to invite Ron Zollinger to the podium, please.
Thank you, Mayor Wood. It's nice to be back in these chambers. Representing the Kaysville Community Garden and the Yard and Garden Committee, we have a presentation to make. I'd like to say, just make a comment about the idea of being a volunteer. I've been asked to sit on a couple of committees on the Davis County Health Department, and I always introduce myself, I'm just a volunteer among all the professionals that are at the meeting. But I'm proud of that designation, and Kaysville has a great history of that kind of support. When did it start? I did a little research, and Ben Franklin started the first volunteer fire department, and volunteerism has been strong and vibrant in America. Not only a religious aspect, but civic and political. As America has matured, volunteerism has been part of that great dynamic history. In 2011, I worked with Jared Taylor, then a council member, and Mayor Witt, with the idea of once again reviving a yard and garden recognition service in our city. It had been done a few times, and members of our city had been recognized in various ways, but we revitalized that and appreciated the support of then Vance Garfield over Parks and the mayor, Mayor Hyatt and Jared. We started recognizing yards and businesses who went out of their way to make their frontage look nice and attractive in an environmental way. We started yard and garden tours, collaborating with Fruit Heights and Farmington City for 2 or 3 years. And so we were really on a roll, and our committee decided that we wanted to start somehow a community garden. And Vance suggested the little piece of property between the senior center and City Hall. And they gave us about 15 plots. We put in a drip line, and Carol and Brent Barney were part of that first kind of experiment in having a community garden. We operated under the Little Red Hen principle, where not everybody could come and partake of the produce without putting in a little effort. And then we felt that we needed to expand this. So in 2014 was our first garden. 2015, I contacted Don Cottrell and his sister, who had the property on 475 South Main. A good big acre of land, at least that's my visual estimate of how much it is. And working with the city and attorneys, he was able to donate to the city and the citizens use of his property for a community garden. And that's when it started. And we installed again a drip line sprinkling system, and the Barneys, Carol and Brent, were part of that first year. And they were so interested and so dedicated and so excited about this project that I asked them to help manage that project. And up until this year, Carol and Brent have been viewed as helpers, managers, know all about garden stuff, knowledge base, kind managers, and we're so diligent in keeping that garden going. If any of you have seen the garden, I should have brought a picture, but you can pass by on Main Street across from the Davis High parking lot. What a wonderful visual image that represents Kaysville. And I'm glad to be a little part of it. So this spring, after Carol and Brent put out the drip lines, Brent experienced some health issues that eventually came to take his life. And we express our sympathy and condolences to Carol, and I'm just impressed at how brave Carol was during that whole episode. So tonight, with Michelle's direction, the mayor, we would like to present a memorial sign that will be installed on the garden site, helping everybody who are future gardeners and current gardeners and the city sense and appreciation for Brent and Carol Barney. So if they can come, if Carol can come up. And Michelle, didn't we want all of her family?
Yeah, absolutely.
So this sign will be installed in her garden.
Wonderful. Ron, if you want to take a picture with Carol's family and anyone else from the garden.
We have several garden participants to come on up. Dorothy, Bob, and Jim, and some others.
Nick.
Hey, everybody.
Nick.
Can you take a picture?
Right in the front.
Right here. Carol, you're right in the middle.
Come on down, Council.
Hold the sign. Come back.
So good.
Excited to receive it.
Let's make sure that little tag is there. How about right by the camera? Okay, there you go.
Great.
If we get a little friendlier. Here we go. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ron, just a huge thank you to all you do for our community and the garden, and especially to Carol and Brent. Wonderful tribute. Thank you.
Yes, thanks. And we want to say thank you to, we have volunteers who do so much in so many areas of the city. I see Tammy Worston in the back here. She's such a great asset to our community as well. Lots of people doing lots of things to make Kaysville great. All right, we are going to move on. Declaration of any conflicts of interest. Any conflicts of interest this evening?
No.
Okay, thank you. Go on to the consent agenda.
Just a point
Yes,
of order.
please.
Did we get Councilmember Adams on the line?
Councilmember Adams, are you with us?
I didn't hear it dial in.
No, okay. We might, Councilmember Adams is traveling and he was going to try to attempt to call in. So if he beeps in, we'll recognize him. Consent, anybody want to move that consent agenda?
I'll make a motion that we approve consent items A through G as presented.
A second?
It's been moved by Councilmember DeCare, seconded by Councilmember Garn. Any comments? All right, we'll go to a vote. Councilmember Garn?
Aye.
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 Motion passes 4-0. All right. Then we're going to move on to our action items. First, we have carbon-free power project resource subscription and jump allocation.
Thanks, Mayor. I'm just going to kick this off really briefly. We have Bruce is here to answer any questions. I think, do we have Nathan here as well, Bruce? Okay. He's here somewhere. Okay. Nathan was with the UAMPS, and he can also answer some questions. But I hope you read Bruce's email he sent you recently. This is a really exciting project, something we've been following very closely for before I even worked for Kaysville. I remember talking about this in my previous city a lot. So the carbon-free power project is a nuclear small modular reactor project. We're recommending we go from 1 megawatt to 5 megawatts. The key portion of this, why we're discussing this today, is the Department of Energy has agreed to install and pay for the first unit, and anyone that lets them know before the end of July that they would like to take advantage of that first unit once it's installed and paid for can also take some of that power at a little bit of a discounted rate. So that's exciting. The Power Commission really vetted this out and made a unanimous recommendation to approve both of these agreements. You'll notice that in this one agenda item there are two agreements. One for what's called the jump agreement, the jump allocation, and the other is to move our allocation from 1 megawatt to 5. So again, Bruce and Nathan are here to answer questions, and our recommendation is to approve both of those agreements in one motion.
All right. Do we have anybody signed up to speak to this? Okay, thank you. All right, I'll go to questions from council. Council questions. Councilmember Garn.
I wish I had a better memory, but how many megawatts does the city typically use, or a range or something? How big would this be from the 5 megawatts? Yeah, what percentage?
5 megawatts. So in the summertime, we peak out at about 48 megawatts. So it's just a small portion of.
It's about 10% then,
Yes.
more or less. Thank you.
Okay.
I have one more question while you're up here, Bruce.
Yeah. Councilmember Barber.
Thank you. One, can you just talk about the match from the Department of Energy and why this is a good time for us to participate in this project?
Yes. So the jump allocation is a percentage of our subscription into the total project. So Department of Energy, as I told you, that they're paying for half the whole project anyway, and then they're taking 100% of that first module. They're going to pay 100%, takes out all the first kind risk, and they're going to get that on early too, so they can get it up and running. Work out any kinks in that first unit. They're going to have a 15-year contract. They're going to use that. So anybody that's in with a percentage of subscription gets a percentage of the jump module, which is the module after they're done, which will be paid for. So it'll be operations and maintenance, and decommissioning costs that, but there will be no debt service on that unit. So that cost will be substantially lower than the full unit with the debt service.
Okay.
Thank you. That was what I found really helpful.
Any other questions?
Yeah,
Councilmember Page.
Yeah, just a quick one. We've heard earlier that, I guess some of UAMP's generation that, the cities are using now, I guess, are ramping down on some of the fossil fuels and stuff like that. Have they given you a timeline when a lot of these are going offline, or?
We have a definitive San Juan generation station, which is coal in New Mexico, is going to be off by 2022. We're assuming they're talking about it even going a little sooner than that. Our biggest one that I'm concerned about is Hunter 2. We have about 5.5 megawatts of that. It's supposed to run till about 2032, but you don't know with coal. They've had pushback from the Sierra Club and things, and they've been pushing against it. So, and if the administration changes, that would change it in a real hurry also. So we have no idea. We're guessing, hoping it makes it to the middle of 2025 or 2026, but there's not a definite on that one yet. So.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Any other questions? Okay. I'll entertain a motion at this time.
I'll make a motion to approve 2 contracts, one to add up to 5 megawatts of power from the CFFP, and also a second motion to our contract to approve the JUMP program.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved by Councilmember Garn, seconded by Councilmember DeCare. Any comments at this time? Councilmember Barber.
Thank you. Just as I've been looking at this, and I'm far from an expert, but I know that investing in nuclear energy raises a lot of questions that come. But I'm appreciative that we have this opportunity to take a small look at it where we're also backed by the Department of Energy. So I think this is a good step, but it's also not a signal that we won't be looking into other sources of energy that will come from us. Renewable sources are absolutely a good complement to nuclear in this case.
Mhm. Thank you. Or an all of the above
Yeah.
energy
We'll take it
consumer.
Yeah.
Right. Okay, thank you. All right, let's go for a vote. Councilmember Barber.
off. Aye.
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 Okay, motion passes 4-0. Thank you. All right, we're moving on to consideration of a cellular tower in Barnes Park and site lease agreement with T-Mobile West.
Thanks, Mayor. As you are also aware, Council, this is an item we've had considerable discussion about. This action item is a lease with T-Mobile in this case to install a cellular tower on an existing tower in our park. This will also be something that T-Mobile will install, and then we will own and maintain. So we have the ability to not only potentially add a different service provider to that tower and receive additional revenue that way, but also there are probably some applications from our IT department where we could use this tower as well, which could be very beneficial to us. The staff, mostly Lyle Gibson and Cole Stevens, have really vetted this out as far as location goes. They presented this to the Planning Commission, who took 2 meetings to go over this and really answer questions and really, again, vet this out, which we're grateful for. At the end of the day, they made a unanimous recommendation to approve this lease as it's been presented to you tonight, and that's our recommendation as well.
All right, thank you. Do we have anybody signed up to speak to this? Okay. All right. Okay. We have Rock. And your last name?
I dare you to say it.
Shooter?
Not bad. Rock Shooter.
Shooter. All right. Thank you.
I don't have a lot to add. My primary contact has been with Lyle Gibson and the Parks Department. Everybody's been extremely helpful. We've kind of decided together what was best for the city and the park and all of that. I've offered to answer any questions about the lease. I haven't been asked any questions, so I'm just here to support it.
Okay, that's wonderful. And if we do have any questions in the course of our discussion, we'll call you up.
Perfect.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.
All right. All right. Okay, questions from council? Any questions from council? Councilmember Page.
Yeah, just one question, probably this would be the best for Shane. How did the city determine that this was the site that you would like to put this?
I think when T-Mobile approached us, they kind of targeted the park as a good place, and they had some other places that they wanted to start with. But what we just involved our department heads, again, mostly Cole and Lyle, and even Gary in our power department, to where could this be the most discreet location, so it's not really something that takes away from people visually. Where can we provide power to this place? Where will it help the city with their infrastructure needs? It's on an existing tower, which is also, we feel like is the lowest impact it can possibly be. So it was those efforts that were made by the department heads to put this in a place where we felt comfortable recommending it, because frankly, we hope that this is going to serve T-Mobile customers in residents of Kaysville in a better way. But at the end of the day, this wasn't something the city was seeking out in increasing revenue. We love to get that revenue. It'll benefit our Parks Department, which is always in need of additional revenue. But we wanted this to work for us, and so that recommendation's coming because we feel like this is a good spot for that, and it will be a net positive for the city.
All right, appreciate it.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Barber.
So 2 questions. The first, and I listened to the Planning Commission meeting on this, but I wasn't sure. It just says that the lease begins at $1,500. Is there something built in for it to increase over time?
Do you know that?
Yeah, there is over, and I don't recall how frequently it does, but it does escalate. Yes, thank you.
Okay. But I'm sure that's laid out in there. And then my second question is, It says in here that the $1,500 would just go to the general fund, but you just said parks, so are we earmarking it for Parks and Rec?
That's going to be up to you. I mean, it does just go in there, and again, it's hard in general fund to say, here's $1, this is where the dollar is
Yeah.
being spent, but this is additional revenue that we hadn't planned on,
Yeah.
and so accordingly, if that's something you'd like to see that spent in that area, I think generally, I would like to see that kind of, as it impacts that department, it
Yeah.
maybe should benefit that department as well, but.
So can I ask a follow-up question?
Of course, please.
So if just an idea, if we've made the motion to say we approve this and have that money put directly to Parks and Rec, would that be
I
appropriate?
would love that,
Okay.
that direction would be helpful.
Fantastic.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. Councilmember DeCare, did you have something?
No, just a comment, but I'll wait.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay, I'll entertain a motion at this time.
I'll make a motion that we approve the consideration of a cellular tower in Barnes Park and site lease agreement with T-Mobile West with the condition of the lease payment, the monthly lease payment being added to the Parks and Rec budget.
Second.
All right, it's been moved by Councilmember Barber and seconded by Councilmember DeCare. Any comments, Councilmember DeCare?
Just a real quick one. I know that this has been in works for a long time, and I'm just really, really happy to see this come to fruition finally. This is a huge win for the city. Like I said, our Parks and Rec department is going to benefit from this, and everybody likes cell service, and so it's a win across the board. So thank you for all your work on this. I appreciate it. So.
Okay. All right. Yes, Councilmember Garn.
So perhaps this is a comment question, but because this goes into general fund and Parks budget comes out of general fund, I completely agree with your comment that it's difficult to say where a dollar goes or where it comes in and where it goes out. That's different, of course, with an enterprise fund where typically those funds stay within the fund and are used for that purpose. In the case of general fund, what does it really mean that we designate it? So in other words, when we go to the next budget process, do we take, well, here's what Parks is asking for, let's add 1,500 more per month to the budget, or how does that work?
I just wrote down here actually to talk to Dean and Cole about tomorrow is to, as we recognize additional revenue, which we usually open the budget up once a year, so this would be a note for an open budget time, and we recognize additional revenue and then that additional expense. I'd like to just talk to Cole and say, is there something that maybe didn't make it in your budget that's more or less this amount? Is there something else that we can do? Just kind of have that conversation with him, and I'm very confident he's got lots of needs that he'd like to see spend, and then we would just, when we do open that budget, if it's more football pads, we would just increase that line item budget accordingly. So
Thank you.
Thanks.
Can I
And
comment on that?
Councilmember Barber.
I think so long as when I, as a resident, am looking at the budget, as we come on, we can see, we realize that it's not coming at the expense of something else. This is money that was revenue that was generated. So you can
Like
see
a
that.
cost shift, like,
Yeah.
oh, they brought in this much, so
Yeah.
therefore that money can now go somewhere else,
Yeah.
Right.
right?
So it's obvious.
It is hard to see that because
Right.
a lot of times the way the municipal accounting goes is the revenue side is so separate, so you don't see it. It's just people want to see it coming in and spending in like
Yeah.
one transaction, and it's really two real separate things. But we can still show that
Yeah.
very easily how we've increased
Yeah.
one $18,000 and another.
I'm thinking of,
$18,000.
during our budgeting session, we had additional line items from, bond payments that we were paying versus bond payments that expired, so we had this money. So I'm thinking it'd be something very similar to that. We had this money, now we don't, or we had this money that we didn't have before, this is where it's being spent.
And normally bringing that in,
Mm-hmm.
it would we probably wouldn't change anything, and it would just be additional fund balance that would roll over at the end of the year. But I
Fantastic.
like the allocation myself. I think that's a
Great.
good thing to
Thank
do.
Thank you.
Just a follow-up.
Let's
Go
go with Councilmember
Go
Garn.
ahead. Go ahead.
Okay, I'll resist the urge to do a treatise on government accounting, which I'm not an expert in, but a little
Thank you.
bit in the
Thanks for
CPA.
that.
But yeah, it's mainly just a mental process here. I mean, it's a little different if you have an impact fee, because then you're legally looking at certain projects and saying, this is what we're using our impact fees. So there's not necessarily like almost a legal requirement, or like the enterprise fund with Prop 5, where it only is used for this purpose. However, in how you think about it, I totally get where you're going with it, so thanks.
Yes, and I think that an $18,000 bump in Parks and Rec budget is, I mean, that's substantial, and I think that that, again, bodes well to the way that this whole project was developed, and I think it's a great thing, so.
All right.
Yep.
Fantastic.
All right, let's go to a vote. Councilmember DeCare.
Aye.
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 Motion passes 4-0. All right, now we're going to move on to our work items. Shane?
I like it better when Lyle's here.
Yeah.
He does the most of the talking.
And then you went on different tables
I
this
know,
week.
we
It's just
really
all
throwing
wrong.
everything
It's-
off.
Throwing me all off.
Yeah, you can't do this to us.
Yeah. So this item is a potential or a proposed update to our human resource manual that we updated that about a year ago. So we've kind of been looking at some of the things that are in there that maybe need a little bit of tweaking. This is a proposal to allow department heads some discretion in bonusing our city employees. We had a little department head retreat in January. This is one of the items that came out of that retreat is as we look at ways that we can retain employees, this was one that came up. I think it was Chief Oberg that made the suggestion. There's times that we do a merit-based salary, it's step-and grade system, and so when people are meeting expectations, they tend to get a merit increase if we're funding one for year after year. But in this case, what we're looking for is just individual opportunities when an employee has gone above and beyond, and a way to maybe monetarily reward them or recognize that. So we also have mentioned before that there are several individuals that are topped out in our system too, and this might be a way to also acknowledge their continued contribution to our city. So I don't know if you've taken a look at the proposed resolution. We're just in the work session, so we're not looking for anything but moving it to action tonight, or even if you want to make some tweaks to it, that's great. But we just hope that this could potentially be a retention tool that doesn't cost the city a great deal of money, but maybe just one more way that we can acknowledge our employees and retain the good ones as much as we can. So
Okay.
here for any questions on that.
All right. Councilmember DeCare.
So, hey, Shane, I guess a quick question with this. So how, if this is approved or if we move this forward, how are we looking at budgeting for this, or how are we looking at trying to incorporate this? Because, I mean, the budget for this year is already set in
Right.
stone in that. So would this be something that would be moving forward in 2020?
It definitely would then, and I think we would be able to do some this year, but it would be a much scaled back version of what you're looking at
Right.
there, just to be able to. But again, if you remember what I'm always teasing Dean about, he's so conservative on both revenues and expenses. We tend to be able to have some room to do things like this.
No,
We would
and
do
I
that
know
very
we do,
carefully this
right.
year, because you're right, we didn't budget for this specifically, but he tends to err so far on one side that we probably could do some things just initiating the program this fiscal year in 20, and then go ahead and formally budget for it in 21.
Okay.
Great question.
Councilmember Garn.
Yeah, question on this. I saw this a little bit differently. Obviously, there's no amount, there's no budgetary impact through merely, it's listed as a resolution to amend the city
Yeah.
PR policies or whatever and have it in the handbook or something. So it's not, I mean, arguably, you already have the authority granted through the budget process and the city council to make these kinds of incentive awards. So it's not creating a new ability to pay more money. Am I incorrect?
I think you're absolutely right. In fact, Dean and I had this exact same conversation about this is giving I don't want to throw him under the bus because he's so great. This is giving him a much more of a comfort level in doing those kinds of things. I would make the same argument that Councilmember Garn made, that if the money's there, it could be expended by the staff in the appropriate manner that's outlined. And I think that could be done in that. But again, I think it just gives, we want you to know what's going on, of course, and I think it just gives us that comfort level that you have okayed this as a process and something that could be ongoing with the availability of funds.
Yeah, thank you. Do you see it as having the added benefit of perhaps being able to point to this, as a resolution? You have it there, so it sort of draws attention to the fact that this is a benefit. Yeah,
that's exactly right, and I think that helps endear our employees to the support of the council in that regard, and they see that this is a thing that they can look toward. That can go on a regular basis.
Oh, thank you.
Okay, Councilmember DeCare.
Are we still in question, or is this comment, or we're still?
This is
open.
work
This is
session,
open,
so you
right.
can say whatever.
So, not whatever I want to, but just. No, I'm not. I'm joking.
Don't tell Councilmember
DeCare. I'm joking. I'm in full-throated support of something like this because, I mean, our city staff and the folks that work here, the commitment that they have to our city. I mean, we're a full-service city across the board. Every department, is staffed, and I think incentivizing, our people maintains retention. It promotes esprit de corps. It promotes morale. I think that it's an investment to the people that work here, that have worked here for years, decades even. Mike Blackham's here. He worked here for 34 years. I mean, so you have this commitment to our people, and I think that it's vitally important that we back this up and we say, you know what, as city council, or as a body that can make these changes and make this commitment happen, certainly shows a stamp of approval on what our city's doing and the direction that we're going. So I have absolutely no problems with this at all. So
Thank you. Councilmember Barber? Councilmember Page.
Well,
Yeah,
Let's
go
go
ahead.
Page, then Barber.
okay. Hey, just a quick one. Shane, how's this going to be determined on? Is it like the department heads are going to be making those decisions for the people
yes.
underneath them, and then probably you would be making the decision if department head or whatever. So that's
exactly right, and they do. I think the department head does need to include me, and even in their decisions. But we've asked them to be very judicious in this, and I guess I would want you to know that we take this very seriously. This would be an exception, not the rule. This isn't something that everybody's going to be depending on every year. Absolutely nothing like that. This is going to be above and beyond, and kind of some one-time opportunities. And I want to scrutinize that very a great deal. So.
I appreciate it.
Councilmember Barber, then Councilmember Garn.
Just to echo, of course, I think this is a fantastic thing, especially after seeing or getting to know a lot of our city employees from director level to people on the ground. We have some really fantastic dedication in the city. Shane, are you looking for feedback on the proposal that you guys have for the amendment, the actual numbers and how it's laid out?
Sure, you bet.
So I see just it's broken out by basically the size of the department, 10 full-time, more than 10.
Mm-hmm.
But I think there's a couple departments that have significantly more than 10 employees. And so I worry that may have an adverse effect on their ability to support their employees if we're only doing it that way. I wonder if we should have one more level, 10, and then more than 20, more than 30, or something like that.
I think the one that stands out there is police.
Yeah.
They're
what I'm
27
Yeah.
full-time officers.
Yeah.
Seth, correct me if I'm wrong. I think Public Works and Power are in the 15, 16, 17
Yeah.
range. So those three departments are the only ones that are over 10. And they're probably, you could argue there's probably a significant difference between 27 and 15.
And then there's
Ish.
some that have quite a few less, right?
Yes, and then I think Parks is around 9
Yeah.
or 8 or 9.
And might I mention
Fire's
the legal
close.
department?
Yeah.
The legal is the one that's probably
Legal, Department of
the
one.
smallest.
But truthfully, I think my only feedback is, it feels like there's got to be, I think there could be a better way to break this up than by department size. I think if we got creative, because it really, you don't want to adversely hurt someone for being in department with lots of other employees
Mm-hmm.
versus really take care of, our legal department of one, so to speak.
It's good
So
feedback.
I think, I don't have something prepared right now off the top of my head what we can do, but let's look at that. I
Okay,
think we can
let's,
do something.
let
do
me
something
communicate with Dean about that, and
Yeah.
and let's go back to the drawing board a little bit.
Okay.
So it's a great idea.
Okay. Councilmember Garn.
So, at the risk of running over into the executive, just a thought, because I've seen this done before, rather than have a department, because this is a department aggregate max, right? Another way you could consider doing it is having an employee max, right, in any one year, because maybe there are years when you have more than one exceptional performer, and maybe you want to recognize more than one, and to have an aggregate cap kind of stops you a little. I mean, there's nothing to stop you from, I guess at this point, giving the whole 10 grand to one employee.
Right.
But yeah, just something to consider. And then the other question, you mentioned something about, yes, this is up to department heads to suggest, but in the policy document and proposal itself, it says each department head shall prepare a written request submitted to the city manager. So I'm assuming you have some, as you see these come in, you have some, veto authority there, right?
I think so.
Okay,
I think so.
thank you.
And I think that the intent there, from my perspective, is to make sure that the commitment I'm giving you tonight, which is this isn't something we're just going to blanket start giving people unilaterally, is truly what happens. And I have all the, I believe our department heads would absolutely live up to that, but I'd like to know how that's going on an ongoing basis.
Yeah.
Okay. Councilmember DeCare.
Just a real quick one. So, I mean, this is obvious, I guess, but just to hear it. So this is a exclusively merit-based program then, essentially?
Absolutely, yeah.
All right.
Thanks. Okay. All right. So that's just work items, so got some feedback on that. We'll, do you want to move it to an action item,
Yeah.
anyone?
Is that what you're looking for?
That is, but I'm happy to bring it back to work too, and maybe we could just
Yeah.
make some tweaks and bring it back
I
there.
would-
We don't
I
have
would
a
feel-
tremendous hurry in this.
Yeah, I
That's
think
what
that'd be
you're
great. Yeah, I was going to say bring it back to work. We're not in a
Yeah.
hurry.
So I'm going to make a motion and see what happens, because I just sort of, I mean, my feeling is we step over into you could bring it back and then we could turn it down, right, if you make this adjustment on the aggregate caps. I just hate it when business stands on the table, because we only meet every 2 weeks, and when we delay this to another work session, now it's a month out. And it's just sitting out there as business, and unless there's some real concern for why we shouldn't move it. And so I'm just going to make a motion to move the Kaysville Personnel Rules and Regulations update to an action item.
I actually agree with that. I'll second.
Okay, it's been moved by Councilmember Garn and seconded by Councilmember Page. Any comments? Councilmember Barber.
Shane, do you feel like you'd have time to come up with a different proposal?
Definitely
and work it
time,
out?
yes. My only concern would be that we get something that's, not that it's not acceptable, but that you'd like to tweak some, but you certainly could do that in an action item too. So I'm fine with that.
That was my
because
question.
I think
If we
we
could
can
adjust
definitely adjust something in the
next
next
You
2
can always
weeks.
defer it if you're not. Sorry.
Yeah, you can.
Okay, all right. Okay, let's go for a vote. Councilmember Page.
Aye.
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 Okay, motion passes 4-0. Thank you. Okay, now we are continuing to work on our fiber optic discussion. And tonight, I'd like to have Jordan Stevenson come and give us an update. He is on our technical advisory group. By the time we are done with this, all the members of the technical advisory group are going to be able to present. So get ready,
You'll
Brett
recognize them
Tarbox.
all.
Yes.
Is Brett presenting tonight too? I know
Yes.
you have, right.
He has.
And he will again in the
And he
future.
probably
John, you
will
want to
again.
present?
John, you might as well. Thank you, I appreciate it. Appreciate the opportunity to provide an update tonight. Just by way of introduction, as Mayor said, I'm Jordan Stevenson. My background is in utility regulation. I've worked for one of the two big regulated public service commission utilities here in the state. I won't say which one because then I get in trouble for sharing opinions and whatnot. But in that role, I oversee revenue requirement, cost of service studies, and rate design, as well as policy issues. And my background is as a certified public accountant prior to moving into regulation. I also have experience with the power utility here in Kaysville. About 2.5 years ago, I joined the Kaysville Utility, the power board here, and at that time, you may remember there was a lot of discussion about solar and a lot of angst about rate changes, and as a board, we were able to sink our teeth into that for a good solid year and came up with a rate study, rate design. I don't feel like that process was always very smooth as far as emotion and angst over what that plan would ultimately be. It was kind of like watching a series of Making a Murderer where it's like, he's guilty. No, he can't be guilty. No, he's definitely guilty. And ultimately, we landed on a solution that I'm proud to say today that the Utah Clean Cities that had kind of acted as an intervener here in Utah looking out for solar, the Utah Solar Association, have publicly pointed to Kaysville's plan that was approved by the council as an example to follow, to be fair to both utilities and to solar advocates as well. And solar has continued to grow here in Kaysville. And so a good process. And I feel like it's a little bit of deja vu getting into this topic. So I've recently also been involved in the Technical Advisory Committee on fiber. And I think my wife may stream this tonight because she's been engaged in this. And so I just have to say really quick how I got involved with this is I've always been very friendly towards my wife's old crowd of friends when we meet them. And it just so happened that Michelle Barber was one of those friends, and I'm so friendly and engaging with her friends that here I am on this advisory committee after having meet Michelle.
Mistake,
so I do
Jordan.
want
So choose-
kudos
yeah.
for that if my wife is listening.
Choose your friends carefully.
Exactly.
You regret
So
it now.
we do have
Do
a
you really think she's
recommendation.
streaming this right now?
I'm
Do you
sorry,
really think
what's
she's
that?
streaming this right now?
Or probably later tonight when the kids
Oh,
go
yeah,
to bed.
later tonight, right?
Oh, yeah.
Prime time
But she'll
again.
probably be later tonight.
Okay,
That's
all
right. We do have a recommendation. All of the council members should have this. Before I will read this word for word because I want to make sure we get it right. Before I do that, the Technical Advisory Committee wanted to provide some additional information and context and insight into the importance of this project. And so I will try to get through this quickly and leave time for discussion before 8 o'clock. But I'd like to take a moment and emphasize how state-of-the-art connectivity across the community using fiber infrastructure is critical to the future success of Kaysville City government and enterprise operations, and is essential in enabling Kaysville City to meet the challenges and opportunities of a rapidly changing future. So this connective city infrastructure can meet essential needs in all of the city's various operations. And now I actually found a fiber cable and I cut it and I zoomed in and took a picture and I put it onto this slide, and that's what it looks like. And it
Very, very
actually
zoomed
had
in picture.
Kaysville functions on there. And so we've talked a lot about internet leading up to this point and the citizens' perspective. And so tonight we wanted to focus on how this is essential for Kaysville City and its operations. And here is a chart of each operation, which includes electricity distribution, water distribution, fire, police, recreation, administration, as well as some others. In each of these functions, access to relevant information at the right time is critical. And I'd like to just share a few examples, and then I'll share the recommendation. So why don't we just zoom in on power here, and then go one more click. So just last month, Pacific Gas and Electric, a California-based electric and gas utility, agreed to pay $1 billion in damages for blazing fires linked to its power lines, poles, and other equipment. Its payment related to the 2015 Butte fire, a series of fires in 2017, and the 2018 Camp Fire, in which 85 people were killed and 18,804 structures were destroyed. The Camp Fire was the deadliest and most destructive wildfire in California history, and the fire was confirmed to have been caused by one of PG&E's power lines. So what does this have to do with fiber infrastructure? With the right real-time information, this tragedy could have been averted. As explained by Missouri University of Science and Technology, fiber can enable an electric utility to monitor the health and performance of its smart grid in ways that current technologies don't come close to achieving. In 1 millisecond, the utility can get thousands or tens of thousands of temperature readings along lines, transformers, substations, each at different locations, which would allow the utility to immediately detect a problem before disaster occurs. Well, we move on to the next example real quick. In addition to safety, fiber can also enable an electric utility to meet the needs of the smart grid of the future, where instead of energy flowing in one direction from a very large generation source to multiple end uses, energy and load balancing will occur in multiple directions in a distributed manner, which is what we were experiencing here in Kaysville with solar, allowing the utility network to become a conduit that balances energy needs across an increasingly complex energy world. All the promise of smart grid technology, though, depends on data flowing back and forth between various equipment in milliseconds, and that requires a lot of bandwidth. Let's move on to another example in water. Another area where this type of connectivity serves as an essential role for the future is in water service. Earlier this year, Nate Rowe called his city officials after noticing that his 3-month-old son, Harry, and his wife were sick after the water began tasting metallic. A city worker visited his home and assured him that the water was safe to drink, so the family resumed using the tap water. Several days later, the family discovered that the water contained 150 times the appropriate amount of fluoride and was contaminated with lead and copper. This contamination in Sandy City's drinking water impacted an area that grew to include 6 schools, multiple care centers, a recreation center, and more than 450 homes. It was caused by a malfunctioning valve that led a high concentration of fluoride into the water. Once again, with the right real-time information, this event could have been mitigated. With a robust interconnected network supported by fiber infrastructure, a city can achieve visibility into water networks in real time to respond to these types of problems. And then one last example in emergency response. The city of Ammon, Idaho is demonstrating the types of solutions that can be achieved with city-owned fiber infrastructure. Let's pause that for a moment, sorry. It has developed a school emergency screencast application that harnesses its lightning-fast fiber optic network to automatically report gunshots and provide live video, audio, and geospatial information to first responders in the event of a school shooting. It achieves this by using gunshot detection hardware within public schools, software that immediately collects video feed in the location of the gunshot, and then sends that information along with audio to local dispatch. First responders receive the live video, audio, and geospatial information on their phone within seconds of the first initial gunshot. Let's go ahead and skip the video because I'm a little nervous on time. You can Google it though, pretty cool technology.
The test gunshot. It was in a test scenario.
It was a test. Yeah, this shows the test. But let's go ahead and, I think if you just hit escape and then you can click back into the presentation and we'll continue on.
Here?
So up on the bottom right corner of the, yeah, that right there. And then just hit the next arrow if you would. Thanks, Shane. You're doing a great job.
Oh, yeah. Where's Lyle when we need him?
Okay, these are just a few examples of how a robust network of connectivity could serve Kaysville City's various government and enterprise operations. In addition, this infrastructure would also provide educational, medical, and economic innovations that would enhance the lives of Kaysville residents and businesses. Last year, Kaysville City budgeted to spend $45 million across all of its various departments in its effort to provide safe, reliable, resilient, and cost-effective services. The annualized installation cost required to achieve a smarter, connected city using fiber infrastructure is estimated to be roughly 2 to 3% of that amount. This brings up one of the unique strengths of this solution, however. This network would also provide valuable internet service for residents and businesses across the city and generate revenue to cover the costs through a dedicated utility fee. With few exceptions, this service would allow customers to cancel currently lower quality, higher cost internet service they are already using. This results in an overall cost neutral or even cost benefit solution for the city of Kaysville to meet its future data infrastructure needs. I'll now read the recommendation from the Technical Advisory Committee. Reliable, comprehensive, and affordable connectivity is an essential component to the future success of Kaysville City's government and enterprise operations. The current state of this connectivity is grossly inadequate to meet the future needs of essential services that Kaysville provides. A city-owned fiber optic network spanning the current operations of Kaysville City, including services to buildings and residents, represents the most reliable, comprehensive, and affordable connectivity solution going forward. As stated in the committee's June 20th recommendation, the City of Kaysville can no longer afford to put off action regarding this important initiative. As such, the Technical Advisory Committee recommends that, first, the city take up an action item in the next City Council meeting to discuss governing parameters for the fiber project. These governing parameters would include, but not be limited to, the following: total capital expenditures, ongoing operating and maintenance expenditures, service offerings, rate and fee structures by service offering, and customer opt-out and re-entry policies. And second, prior to the first City Council meeting in September, extensive additional study and community outreach should be conducted to define and solidify these proposed parameters in as much detail and specificity as possible. The action item in the next City Council meeting would include a straight up and down vote by the City Council to approve and adopt those parameters as acceptable for the fiber project. To be clear, approval of these governing parameters will not be considered approval to finance or launch a fiber infrastructure project. Rather, approval would only solidify the acceptable conditions of the eventual fiber infrastructure plan. Following approval of governing parameters, an executable plan to construct the fiber infrastructure, including the specific funding provisions, project timeline and milestones, and performance under the governing parameters, will be prepared and presented to the City Council. And this concludes my comment.
Thank you, Jordan. I appreciate
Thanks,
that.
Jordan.
Thanks, Jordan.
Is Ryan here? Ryan, can you come up? We've been, as some of you know, Ryan's been working on kind of a master plan for our technological needs in the city. And could you give us kind of an outline of some of the needs that we have in the city right now?
Yeah, I mean, we have quite a few needs in the city, actually. I mean, currently we just put in a new office at the cemetery. That office is about 2 miles north of City Hall. And that building is not served by any kind of data except for a cellular connection. We've looked at Comcast to bring Comcast in, or CenturyLink, and the timing to get that in there is pretty long. So we've been looking at bringing fiber in there. Over the years, we've looked at, we've actually done a lot with SCADA and technology, telemetry for the water department. And currently we're using, cellular modems over that, but there's a lot more that we can do there to bring good information to our water system. We have all our PRVs, our tank sites and our valves that could use data infrastructure to bring back information to the city, and maybe even to provide some automation so that we could control valves. And like one of the examples that I like to use is that if we can control the water flow better from the tanks to the lower elevations, we wouldn't have to inject chlorine in order to keep our water clean. But if we can control those PRVs as water flows down, we may be able to use less chlorine as we get further. So what I'm saying is there's efficiencies in some of these departments that we can use. The same thing with the power department. Jordan had a great example of what kind of what data, bringing data back to a utility can give. We have the same concerns. Heated power lines, outages, being able to control and understand what our capacitors are doing, automating switches, that in the power department. So there's lots of things we could do with the fiber infrastructure. Another example is in our parks. Parks department deals a lot with vandalism at our parks. And we've investigated using videos to kind of curb vandalism at those parks, but it just hasn't been feasible because we haven't had good data connectivity at those locations. So, I think those are just things that we could do right now to kind of improve our operations. Yeah, I could
Thanks.
probably come up with more, but but there's a lot there.
Yeah, thanks. And if it's okay, Todd, could I have you come up and, so this is Todd Marriott. Could you introduce yourself and kind of give us what your role is and kind of your take on this new model?
Well, I've been very impressed, first of all, with Kaysville and your staff and their understanding of why this infrastructure will work. My role has been over the last couple decades to build successful civic and municipal models that help this infrastructure be deployed in a number of municipalities here in Utah and across the country. And so I'm aware of how these things can be put in place, Mayor, to both be economically advisable and beneficial to every single resident in your community. And so the city has asked me, your staff has asked me to help come deploy some of those best practice models, the things that have been very successful, both here locally and nationally, so that your project and the great work you've already done is able to be very successful.
All right, thank you. All right. Questions, council, or comments? Yeah, Councilmember Barber, do you want to start?
Thank you, Jordan, and Todd, everybody. For me, I think this was a necessary step for us to focus on the benefits to the city from this essential infrastructure. Speaking for myself, I have a tendency to get really fixated on the impact to the resident at home. And I think I spoke about this a couple meetings ago about how initially I was really excited about higher speeds at home that residents needs. And then as I've learned more, I've realized it's a much bigger opportunity than that, rather than just that piece. And I think our discussions have largely revolved around residents, what this could mean to them, bringing fiber to their homes. And I think it's important for us to take a step back and talk about it first as a benefit to the city and why the city needs this infrastructure, what it'll bring today versus 10, 20, 30 years down the road. So I think that's a fantastic step back. Todd, could you speak a little about the benefits to the city in going forward with this essential infrastructure at this time, why the opportunity right now is key for us?
I think your comments are perfect, and I thought Jordan and Ryan did a great job of outlining some of the great benefits that are available now and some of the real needs. But I think as the city looks down the road, even in the next 5 to 10 years with a lot of your AMI and SCADA and those services, they do have a life cycle. And so there's a real cost to not having this infrastructure in place. Properly deployed, this does benefit every single person in the city. Sometimes people don't use your rec centers. Sometimes people don't use the parks. Sometimes people only use certain sidewalks. But this infrastructure of fiber will be used by every single resident every single day in city services. And then as advancements in healthcare, school, education, and other essential services are put in place, this makes you very efficient, and it's absolutely critical to your city. I think oftentimes that fiber optic is, we see, oh, my internet, like you just said, and I think what's awesome to understand is this infrastructure is going to make your city save money, be more efficient, be safer, and the quality of life for everybody increases. But as a benefit, as Jordan said, it's really cool to be able to have world class, and maybe, you know, Kaysville will be the fastest connected community on the globe as a side benefit.
Yeah. Fantastic, thank you.
Let's go with Councilmember Garn, then Councilmember DeCare.
Actually, I'm going to, if it's okay, defer to Councilmember.
Councilmember DeCare, then Councilmember Garn.
You're gonna be long-winded, is that what? I'm joking. I'm totally
No, you
kidding.
just served on the committee, so
No,
I
I'm
think
joking.
you should go first.
I'm joking. Councilmember Garn and I go way back. Anyway, so there's, I think that there's a couple of points to note here. That one, 100 years ago, our city here, Kaysville City, decided to
Speaking of internet,
decided to build their own power infrastructure here, electricity, you know. And at a time when people thought, do we really need this? You know, is this frivolous? Is this something that we really need? You know, and you look back at, you know, 100 years ago, those folks making that jump and deciding to take that leap and say, you know what, we're going to do this. We're going to deploy power across Kaysville. And you look at what's happened over the past 100 years with that. Being involved in community service and civic engagement and stuff, as I have been for almost 3 decades, I hear often infrastructure. I hear it all the time from residents and staff and people, and you know, and what are we doing about our infrastructure here? You know, our roads, our, you know, anything infrastructure related. And I think after having this presented to me here recently and taking a look at this and being on the being on the technical advisory committee with several others that are here in attendance over the past year, it kind of dawned on me that this is infrastructure. It's crucial infrastructure. And it's something that, I mean, we look at the life around us, we look at the world around us, our society and that, and, you know, technology is moving faster than ever right now. Things are antiquated before they even come out into the stores and stuff that people are using, you know. And I think that the benefit of this to our city, of building this infrastructure, is vitally important, you know, to be able to, you know, maintain a safe city, to offer services, to do those things. You know, I really do think that moving forward in this direction is a good thing. So obviously there's a lot of moving parts to this. There's a lot of, you know, things to look at. There's a lot of T's to cross and I's to dot, and we want to make sure that we get this whole thing right, you know. But I think, you know, kind of taking a look at this now and, you know, seeing how we can better utilize this fiber optic network more than just internet service to residents, I think is exceptionally crucial at this time with our city's growth and expansion as we move, you know, 10, 20, 30 years down the road. So it's an exciting project. It has been for a long time, but it's definitely something that we need to take a look at. So,
Councilmember Garn.
Yeah, without being too long-winded, I think it's interesting because there is an argument which I understand, almost a constitutional argument, that the government should never do anything that the private sector can't do. And I think that's certainly an excellent argument. The only thing I would point out is, especially at the federal level where the Constitution prescribes certain enumerated powers, but in the case of local governments, and I'll just use one example, in Apollo, landing on the moon, the 50th year anniversary. A lot of people, when Apollo got canceled, I was one of those who thought it should have kept going, but they said, why should we be spending all this money in space when there's so many needs back home? But the point is, there's never been a single dollar spent in space. Every one of those dollars was spent creating jobs in the private sector, private contractors, 1,000 different contractors putting together the space shuttle. And now you have SpaceX and all these private spin-offs and the amazing advancement in so many areas that have come about because of space exploration. And now we look at fiber, and sometimes I feel frustrated because I know that I have concentrated a little bit on the things that I know, but I also knew that there are a lot of other things that I hadn't thought of yet and how important they are. And recently the state has implemented a telework project, and one of the objectives of that is, there's many, but cleaner air, also because of less commuting, also less new buildings to build because you can telework and hotel or share space. And so a lot of those things, but I'll tell you, even it took years and years before in West Kaysville, where I live, before Comcast was finally available. So before that, I had to have a little dish to get faster speed up on my roof. And so now with telework, and these are the things I knew, you have to, sometimes there's some latency there, even with Comcast, especially on the upload. When you have a large number of PDF files on an examination that I need to upload, it's slow. If you have to upload picture files, sometimes you can, or back up your computer. It takes a long time to do that. So those were the things kind of I was focusing on, and I thought, oh, what's not to love about this, where it's lower cost for higher speed, and that makes, so just that, let's take that for a minute though, the difference. If fiber, for example, makes it possible for business to operate more effectively without being on the roads. Think about this for a minute. This is what I ran on in 2015. Because when we talk about just cutting, that's not conservative. Because if all we do is cut, and the budget is mainly employees, then we fire employees in order to make that cut, or we lay them off. And services suffer, like when snow plowing was canceled under previous administration a while, and the outcry from not having the road snowplowed. We can't cut essential services. You have to find a way to become more efficient in delivering those services. And let's just take the business perspective of people living in Kaysville, for example. If more people can telework and do business from home without traveling on the roads, what impact does that have on the roads? I mean, it's almost infinite. You can't fight against technological progress in the first world without killing yourself and now we were talking about the government, which I hadn't considered as much. I know the fiber ring, you can read meters rather than having meter readers. It's more instantaneous. You can control power flows in smart homes. You can become more efficient and reduce demand, even though I think electrical demand will go up, which is a whole nother story. We could go into that. But I guess the point I'm trying to make is it makes government more efficient. So if you are conservative, as everyone is, and Kaysville's the 4th lowest tax city per capita and by $1,000 of income in the state, being a full service city, and unlike Bountiful, which is a little bit ahead of us, does not transfer money from the electrical fund to meet general fund obligations. And you can keep Kaysville more efficient because we can use some of these just-in-time monitoring. I mean, again, I hate to go back to the space program, but most of all the technical, here you've got 16 million parts on Apollo, and thousands of those are critical, that if any of them fail, so guess what? Even without very advanced computer systems, it's all about the monitoring of every system on that space shuttle. That's how they know. That's why they have rows of almost mechanical, compared to today's computers, control devices in the control room in Houston to look at every one of those critical components and make sure nothing is going wrong. Otherwise, you kill the crew and you blow up billions of dollars of investment. And so when we're talking about the city, to have just-in-time knowledge, which we've already moved in that direction with the fiber ring, makes government more efficient and keeps costs lower to the taxpayer and increases the quality of life in the community. This is as essential, and sometimes I think when I think about fiber, it's even more essential than roads, because it controls, it speaks to our control and our ability to control our environment in a better way, to do everything better. So in some ways, it's even more important than those basics, because it'll make those basics more efficient and less costly. And so I think that's why I get so passionate about this and feel that I just disagree with some of my fellow citizens who say, this is just a luxury, we don't need it. No, that's not true. So I'll stop now. But that, yeah.
Just one more thing.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
Councilmember Page.
You know, a little while ago, I pulled out my notes from about probably 5 months ago. Okay? We'll see if any of these things were answered. You know, when I first wrote this and we were talking about this, I put down, is it necessary? And I put, is fiber the answer, or is other technologies going to replace fiber? And then I put down, is the current private sector structure providing the citizens of Kaysville with the best product possible? And I put down, should the city or any other public organization or other organization be involved in providing fiber or any other service that the private sector can do or provide? I said, should we be looking strictly at competition as the answer to solve our internet shortfall? And then I put, will investing in fiber take money and other resources away from other essential services of the city? You know what's interesting, through my study and talking to different people and talking to other cities and people that live in other cities that have a different structure than Kaysville, all these have been answered for me. You know, one of the interesting things, you know, you were talking about Kaysville and starting their own power company. The reason they started their own power company wasn't because they had a brain melt and they all decided, you know what, hey, this will be great to have electricity. No, that wasn't the reason. The reason was the private sector wasn't providing the service that they needed.
Right.
They tried on 3 different occasions to get the private sector to do it, and they never did it. And you know, and today's been a frustrating day for me when I had one of those service providers come out, and I'm paying $65 a month, and I can't even use Alexa. You talk to it, and it goes, I can't even talk to you at this time.
You can't even run your life.
I mean, what a joke this is. And I guess the concern I have is, I think we need to look at it, what's best for Kaysville, and look at it completely above water and understand that this isn't going away. And other things are not going to overtake it, because it really is a combination of a lot of things. Even if Wi-Fi, you know, they go big into that, they still got to use fiber to be able to use the Wi-Fi. There's just so many issues like this. I just think that I think that 10 years or 15 years down the road, it's going to be a completely different world than what we're looking at right now. And I think that if we don't have the courage, or I think we're going to be kicking ourselves in the behind for a long time. That's my opinion.
Thanks. Councilmember Barber.
Just a final comment. I've been speaking the same thing to a lot of different cities and perspectives, one of which was the Ammon, Idaho's mayor. I had a really good conversation with him and several neighboring cities. And it was interesting, they all commented, those that have been down this road in different ways, they commented that they wish they had looked at this opportunity the way that we're considering it, on a citywide level, on what it can benefit the city as a whole first, rather than getting so far down into what residents will need and specific providers. They said they wish they had looked at the citywide infrastructure first, built that, and then looked at how they can customize it to the needs. And so I think I get really passionate about thinking what a good opportunity this is for our residents. I know I've spoken, we could have gone with a different model nearly 2 years ago that would have still been good. I really do think it would have been good, but not nearly as scalable and beneficial in the long run as this is going to be for our city.
Thank you.
Mayor?
Yes, please, Todd.
I just wanted to address something really quick. Having worked with scores, dozens of cities, to that comment, I think that Kaysville is unique. You've gone through a very difficult process, and as I've evaluated it, having worked with a lot of different city councils, mayors, and city staff, I am very impressed with how you've approached this, because you've approached it this way and come to the conclusion with your city staff and your mayor and your city council that this infrastructure is critical to the community. And to, I like you, I'm very conservative, and I would love to see, and if there was anybody or any private company out there that's willing to build this to your spec, I think you should stand out of the way and let them do it. That would be awesome. But that just doesn't happen because it is truly infrastructure, and infrastructure in its very essence necessitates a different return. That is a longer period of term because it's addressing long-term infrastructure. And like Councilmember DeCare said a moment ago, 100 years ago, I'll try to find it, but an analysis that a governmental body was doing like this, where they were saying, and they had evaluated it, and they came to the conclusion that electricity was a luxury for the wealthy, that we have enough coal, gas, and well oil for our lighting needs. My grandma, who's 99 years old, 100 years just passed away, she still called it her light bill. But electrical infrastructure is significantly more than that, and each of you has at least 2 or 3 different items there of electrical infrastructure that you're working with right now to manage the city. So it is, Mr. DeCare, exactly like that, is that this infrastructure isn't about the internet. Just like electrical infrastructure wasn't about lights, but we love having lights.
Right.
It's great that we're not having to, that Shane's not having to fill all the well oil tonight in your lighting needs, right? But it's exactly analogous, and I just wanted to commend you for how you're approaching this and how this is being implemented in terms of the proposal and the very direct initiative from the mayor and council and the committee to implement this as infrastructure and then let private sector companies compete to provide internet as a side benefit. And I think that you're for sure on the right, you have it all right and on the right track.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. So I want to.
Can we make a comment about?
Yes, please.
I was just going to say, we are thankful that we have allocated resources to hire expert consultants. And, it's only been a short time since we did that, and we're already seeing vast improvement. I think when you're doing a big project like this, it's essential to get great resources coming in. So I think that's an excellent example.
So I do want to point out kind of a shift in thinking that I've had. It's been recent, and after hearing from our technical advisory committee, from citizens, from our staff, from those that we've hired to help us navigate this. I was thinking of this strictly from a resident perspective of consumer of internet. And I have had a significant shift in my thought process after having my my vision open to what this truly is 21st century infrastructure. And because of that, it turns into something different for me. This isn't a nice to have. This is a must have. And as such, I feel that we need to start thinking of this similar to our roads, our water, wastewater, and if you look at recommendation number 1, what is being recommended is that we set up a fiber infrastructure project. It would be similar to power, water. It would be its own individual entity, and as such, we would need to fund it. We can't shift money over from general fund in order to do this. So what we have been discussing internally is talking about having a utility fee specifically to fund the infrastructure. But as a side benefit of that, and we're thinking it might be between $10 and $12, somewhere around there. But as a side benefit of that, every home would have access to some internet as part of that fee. And if people wanted to go ahead and purchase more from whatever provider they want, they could absolutely do that. But if they want to stick with Comcast, they absolutely can do that. And I know I've talked to a lot of people who've bundled and they like what they've got. You can keep what you have, but there will be this $10 to $12 utility fee that will pay for the infrastructure, that will make sure that we don't have fluoride at 150% in our water, and that we will be able to provide the services in efficient manner. And what's great about even us having this discussion in the first place is that Comcast and CenturyLink have already decreased their rates. If you are at home and listening to this and you have not called Comcast and asked for a reduction in your rates, you need to do that immediately because they are lowering rates right now because we're having this discussion. So I think this is going to be a net positive, even though we are looking at instituting a fee to build out this infrastructure. I think the money that goes out of your pocketbook is going to go down because of this. And the access, the quality of this ancillary spin-off of the access to high-speed fiber at your home is just a wonderful side benefit. So I want us to start thinking of this as a utility for the city to make sure that we run efficiently, and then folks who want to purchase more internet, they are welcome to do so. And we will make sure that there's going to be lots of different providers. And what's exciting to me is that we're actually increasing capitalism. We won't have a duopoly anymore. So it's going to be exciting. But overall, anybody, the money going out of their pocketbook should go down. So, but I wanted to be clear that as my thinking has shifted on this, I have been one who has said, we're going to vote on this. 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 I'm overwhelmed with the number of people who have talked to me, and the survey results we've had. We have people saying, just do it, just do it, just do it, just do it. There is a time crunch. If we're going to do this, interest rates are low right now. We would need to bond for this before the end of the year. And so there's a time crunch. There's a lot of these things that we're still in an investigation mode. And so when we're talking about having extensive community outreach and involvement, and we're going to be continuing to work on this, and we would invite people to come, participate, help us make sure that we get the best possible product that we can for Kaysville. So, yeah, Councilmember Garn.
Yeah, one more comment, so I hope you won't mind this, Mayor, but taped was a public meeting or recorded a work session that we had earlier this spring where I disagreed with the mayor quite a bit, yes. Saying that I thought that, and this is sort of my general belief, that we're elected as representatives to study the issues and to make our best choices based on what we think is best for the community as a whole. And so I was very adamant that I didn't think this should go to a vote. I think a couple of things changed my mind on that where I was willing to agree that it would be better. And the major thing, I think, is the fact that in what had been proposed or floated previously, there was 80% would have to participate, and there'd be an opt-out for a certain, 20% or something. Or there'd be some opt-out feature. I think the distinction here, and then there'd be the $17 a month for the utility fee. But I think what's changed in my mind here is that now it's an opt-in. So the city is doing fiber for its own purposes as a utility, which it's already done partially with the fiber ring, but to complete that and at the same time make the choice available. So now it's an opt-in type of a model. At that point, and so in other words, if it's opt-out, then I think it needed to go to a vote of the people because it's coercive. You will participate, and a certain number have to participate. In this case, where there's a choice involved, I think it easily becomes a city council decision again.
Yeah, Councilmember DeCare.
Just real brief. I completely understand where Councilman Gurn's coming from with this, and I do agree that the whole opt-in mindset of it, it does alleviate that that idea that you have to take this, and then this 20% opt-out where you had to disclose why and whatever. So I think at the end of the day, like I said, it's a bit of a pivot point here, but I think given the information we have, I think it's a fair assessment to say that in the year that I've been on the Technical Advisory Committee, along with Councilmember Barber and some folks here, Jordan Stevenson and Brett Tarbox and a few other folks that are here, and the mayor, I think that it's a fair assessment to say that there's actually been a lot of pivoting going on. This isn't some, granted it's a new direction, but a year ago, my mindset was completely different than this right now. And I think to speak to Councilmember Barber's point, going through a feasibility study, hiring professionals, granted, our technical advisory committee was outstanding, is outstanding. It's a great group of minds. It's a great group of people, but we can't look at all the moving parts. We can't turn everything over and look at it from every single way. And I think that spending the money and doing this right has been vitally important. And we're at a point right now where and like you said, we're still looking at this. There's no decision being made tonight. There's nothing, nothing's going on tonight. There's just conversation and looking at this objectively from all sides and digesting the information that we're receiving and trying to make the best absolute decision for the future of our city. Mm-hmm. So,
thank you.
That's where I stand on that.
Yeah.
I'm done with my comments.
Shane, so are we hoping to have council request an action item for the next council meeting?
I don't think we're ready for that yet. We
No.
were hoping to maybe present some, kind of like
parameters.
Jordan proposed, some,
Item number
what
one.
did he call those? Parameters.
The parameters,
Yes. That we'd present some of those maybe in kind of a bullet point form next time to discuss the opt-in, the opt-out, what that kind of looks like, so.
Okay. Are we comfortable with that, council?
Yes.
So,
It'll work in a work.
direction to staff, make it so. Any other comments to be made at this time?
Aye.
Concerning, oh, sorry.
Councilmember Barber, yeah?
I think I'm excited to see those parameters next session. I think that's one of the things residents have been looking for is tell us exactly what this is going to look like. We've had extensive look at it, everything that we've put out before. We've tried to be extremely transparent. You'll see model after model after model, everything saying, you know, we're working on this. We're wanting the residents to be part of this process, and that's the commitment I would continue to say. Just speaking for myself, I feel like I'm still in the investigation process. I'm not positive where this is going to lay out. I'm not positive how I feel one way or the other yet. These transitions are vital in projects, especially in leading big projects like this. I'll be the first to admit my mind has changed. I've thought one thing and then I've learned another. I think that's a sign of a good leader, that you're open to new information, your perspective changing based on more education, more feedback from residents, and taking that all in. And so that's why next council meeting, will really help me as a representative, but it'll also help residents to have a better feel for what we're looking at, how we're biting this off, and specific pieces that we can come to. And then that second one, I know there's no action to direct to staff for next meeting, but it's just the community outreach. I know some parts of the community feel like we have been just blasting information, and I know there's other parts of the community, people that are just, they still aren't aware. And so I think we need to up our efforts to really reach out to all residents, and we need the community's help in that. So
Thank you. Yeah, and do you know what I love about this council? And it is this council that started it, which was more community involvement. And it started when we did, one of the first big things we did was the road fee, and we learned from that. Yeah. Boy, did we learn from that.
But we did, but it was also a great process.
Yes.
It was a good process.
And so
better outcome because of it.
This council has been committed to involving residents earlier on, and instead of just presenting something as a finished product and this is what we're going to vote on, right? So because of that, I think we end up with a much better product at the end, because we have been able to benefit from the community's wisdom. So so I'm really proud of what we've accomplished to date, and I'm really excited to find out what it's going to look like by the time we're ready to go. So thank you not only to the council members, technical advisory group, residents who've taken the time to engage with us and talk with us and ask questions and hold our feet to the fire, and even if it's uncomfortable, we really appreciate that. So, all right. All right, we're going to go to...
Do we need a motion or anything?
Do we need a motion, or do you have direction?
No.
You've got it? Okay. Let's go to call to the public. Do we have that sheet? Just a sec. Thank you. All right, first we have Rick Lewis.
Is that the only one?
Nope, there's one more after you.
Oh, bless his heart, whoever it is.
I hope there's a joke. Did you come with
No.
a joke today? No joke, okay.
No.
Okay.
I found out today with the Davis Clipper that we're getting another property tax increase, that it's going to go up $25 a month, $25 a year, and that should raise about $250,000 for the city. So the city the costs to us never go down, it always goes up. A comment on the California PG&E, the fluoride deal, the NASA to the moon and whatnot, water, power, and other things. All of that works really well if you have sensors. If you don't have the sensors, they cost money. And they cost money to put them in, and they cost money to program them. But I'd like to address two issues. First one is this fiber optic that we're talking about. I have seen people suggest that there'll only be 1,700 who can opt out. And it'll be on a first come, first service, and it'll cost so many dollars. If you want to hook into the fiber that's right out your door, there's going to be a fee. I'm concerned about that. I'm concerned that we're being pushed into things that other cities have done. Colorado did some of these things. We don't want to go down where we're forced to do things. We are independent. At first, my first thought was a city-run utility would be an ideal thing because it would keep costs down. I'm beginning to have second thoughts that the people up there can do that. I think some people are looking for revenue sources. We need another cash cow. I'm concerned. If you had me to vote right now, I'd be more reluctant to not to have the city to be part of it. I'm concerned about, the squirrels in the cash register. The second issue I have is about the fame that our city council is getting. A lot of people think it's quite comical. I don't think it's too comical. In talking, I found only two people around that a number of people don't like what's going on in Kaysville. Most of the people I've talked to want a completely new city council, one that's not beholden to business as usual or to some grandiose plan. And it's interesting, many of these people have sought me out and complained to me. And most of those have said, we need to re-elect Dave Adams and more people like him. And I thought, that's interesting. I'm concerned with where we're going and with how people view us and how people see us. From what I see right now, we moved to Kaysville in 1981. If we were coming back through again looking for a place to stay, it wouldn't be Kaysville. I don't think it's Manisville. I think we got some issues.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Just for future reference, we are not going to allow candidates or advocating for different candidates in public comment. Thank you. All right, David Bowman.
I just wanted to take a short moment to acknowledge that in January I brought up 4 specific issues I was concerned about when it came to the fiber to the home project. Initial investment is typically higher than anticipated. Take rates, revenues, and operating costs. I wanted to publicly acknowledge that I feel like the City Council has addressed my concerns on most of these topics. Not necessarily 100%, but to the most part. I offer no promises that I'm not going to continue to offer concerns and questions about the process and how it comes about, but I did want to publicly thank the council for taking time to hear the feedback of citizens like myself. Most particularly, I am heartened by the commitment to bring it to a public ballot. I'm not saying that I'm getting on the fiber optic light train at the moment, but I am saying that my strongest opinions about this topic is that it should be voted on by the public, and I am grateful for a council that has invested so much time to do the research, even though their gut feeling may have been to just do it because it sounds good. Thank you.
Thanks, David.
Thank you, David.
All right, thanks. All right, let's go to council member reports. Councilmember DeCare, anything?
We had a fairly lengthy Power Commission meeting on Tuesday night, but everything that was brought up there was carbon-free power project resource. Jordan Stevenson actually had a very good presentation, went over finances and budget and stuff with the power department. A good solid meeting, so it was really good to get down in the weeds and stuff with that. Again, it had been a lengthy time since we had convened as a commission, and definitely beneficial to the city to have that moving forward. So thank you, Jordan, for all your work with that they appreciate it very much so. And the only other thing I have is this Saturday, July 20th, in commemoration of the moon landing, no, I'm joking. We're having a meet and greet here at City Hall with the City Council. So myself will be here, I'll be here, Councilmember Barber may be here, Mayor will probably be here, Jake, and Larry, and that. But we're here for an hour to discuss things. So I invite the public to come out, and if you have concerns or anything, we'll be more than happy to discuss things at length. So that is it.
Thank you. Councilmember Barber.
Parks and Rec, fantastic improvements going on in our parks. And this July 24th, we have our benefit breakfast at Bowman's. Come on out. And it's been interesting to learn about the benefit that it goes from there to scholarships for rec programs to residents in the city, children who otherwise couldn't afford them. And so I did last year I made a note to learn a little bit more about that program and see how it's run, and it's just been a fantastic learning experience for me. And it's both through that breakfast, and any of us parents who are continually signing up kids for rec programs know there's an option to donate every time we do so. And so just a plug that's a fantastic way to serve in the community. That's $1, $5, how much you can give, and then come eat breakfast with us next Wednesday on the 24th at Bowman's breakfast. So.
Okay. Councilmember Garn.
Thank you. Yeah, Public Works, I may get the east wrong, but on 3rd East, some of the road work that was being done there, when they started working on that, found out that actually, however many decades ago, the road base was put down in such a way that you couldn't just do how the project was originally scoped out. It cost about $100,000 more on that project to finish it. But here again, my example, that's very unfortunate that happened in the past, and that perhaps the records didn't indicate how it was done. But once you get in there and you're faced with the choice, do you not spend that, just put a Band-Aid on top of that, and then spend much more later, or do you do it right the first time? And I'm just glad that we do it right, so it's going to last, and the next time it needs to be resurfaced or maintained, it'll be much less expensive. The other thing I'll mention isn't really city related, but I'll just put out a plea out there. I know that with construction season, there is a frustration level. I know sometimes when I'm in a hurry and oh crap, I went the wrong way. This is going to be slower than I thought, or going to be late getting to this lesson or whatever. But I just see so much more with more traffic, maybe more frustration, but people going way too fast in the zone, sometimes 20 miles an hour or more, going through red lights, jockeying for position. And I would just, I don't even know how many people listen or pay any attention to us, or a blowhard like me, but I just plead with people to please consider safety, slow down, and stop running red lights and speeding, at such a high level. So anyway, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Page.
Yeah, just to echo a little bit of what Jake said. The thing that I'm impressed with our administration here in the city is their willingness to do things right. And even if it's politically not a great thing, to just make sure that we got our procedures down and we're making good decisions that'll benefit us in the long run. And I appreciate that so much. And other than that, like I say, it's a busy time of year for everyone, and let's be careful.
Since last we met, we had our 4th of July celebration, and every department in the city participates in that and helps with that. And so many volunteers, so many folks that make sure that this happens. Thank you to Councilmember DeCare, who, along with being council member, has had 11 years of being the parade master, and he.
Parade master.
Yeah. So thank you.
Thank you.
And I want to say thank you to our police. They are out there with the block party up till 3 o'clock in the morning, turning around, getting up at 6 to be at the parade route to make sure that we're safe there. I was speaking to some of the police officers, and they count how many years they have left by how many 4th of July they have to endure. So I thank you.
But while we're all out
Right.
celebrating, they're working.
Yes,
so
exactly.
fantastic.
And our public works have also started pitching in it as well to lend a hand as well. I can't say
Parks and
enough
Rec.
about our Parks and Rec. When we were talking about the bonuses for our staff, Cole needs a bonus. So many people who have done so much to make sure that we have a good time. And the 4th of July fireworks were great. The band was great. The whole event, wonderful. And traffic was not too bad as we left. So I just so appreciate the time and effort that our people put into making sure that this happens. And our council members, Councilmember Barber bent over backwards to make sure that we had a float. Thank you. And so just thanks all around. I do want to mention to council members before I forget, it's time for our city manager review. So I will get some papers ready for you so that you can help me with evaluating our city manager. It is a task and a pleasure every year to do that. All right, city manager, anything?
Mayor, real quick, I had an anonymous employee that wanted me to express their thanks for the city health plan. They had a situation with a family member that had kidney stones, and they wanted me to just pass it on to you. So I wanted to do that publicly, so thank you.
Thank you.
That's all.
All right. Okay.
Oh, I have a
Yes,
request.
Councilmember Barber.
This is for Shane, and for a future update. I know in one of your weekly updates you included some information about both the connector road that we're working on and just basically an update of all of the different corridors and connections that we have. Would that be something that we could just put on an agenda item coming up, that there's some good information there I think residents would really benefit from? Maybe just a presentation when you feel comfortable.
Okay.
Okay.
Fantastic.
All right. I would entertain a motion to adjourn from city council meeting.
So moved.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, there we go. And now we're moving into architectural review committee meeting. Yay.
Do you need a motion to open it? Or-
Nah,
Okay.
I've just opened it.
Great.
All right.
This will be very fast.
Yeah.
Those of
Hey,
you.
don't everybody leave.
Yes.
Come on, man.
This is just a few minutes,
Come on, man.
and then we want to come talk to all of you out there. So don't leave.
All right. Shane.
Mayor, all we're looking for tonight is just a ratification of the cell tower. It has to be done through the Architectural Review Committee as well as General City Council. So,
All right. Okay.
similar motion that you made in the
All
general
right.
meeting.
I would entertain a motion to, on the cellular tower in Barnes Park to replace the existing light post.
I'll make a motion that we approve the consideration of a cell tower in Barnes Park to replace an existing light post.
Second.
Okay, any comments? Let's go with Councilmember Garn.
Aye.
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 Okay, motion passes 4-0. I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
So moved.
Second,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
There we go. All right, thank you.
All right.